You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling a vibe. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways, hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pit masters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Welcome back to another episode of Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. Y'all, if you have been listening to Culture and Flavor, you will remember earlier in this season some of our guests from South Africa who I met from my trip last year. On that trip, I met a mother and daughter duo, Retang and Faith, both indigenous tea crafters on a mission to bring wellness, indigenous knowledge, while empowering local tea crafters with centuries of ancient knowledge. I remember visiting their office in Johannesburg. I was blown away by their hospitality and their story. And I remember having a personal summer, some of y'all might know what that is, in our meeting, and Ritang's mother telling me she never had one. That is when we began to talk about the medicinal and hormonal remedies of their teas. My favorite teas thus far is their hormonal balance and red detox. I have truly recognized a difference. So for my listeners, just to give you all a little bit of background information about Setsong Tea Crafters, it's an award-winning agribusiness and vehicle for development of natural indigenous flora found in the natural landscapes of South Africa, more prominently within the rural areas of Limpopo. The enterprise stimulates the economy in a collaboration with rural cooperatives from Limpopo developed by a community development organization. Now, South Africa is the third most biodiverse country in the world, with many of its biological resources existing within rural landscapes of the country. These biological resources have been used for many decades within traditional knowledge systems to build and strengthen the body, nourish and rejuvenate the skin, and heal ailments. Most of the knowledge of these indigenous resources lies with the elderly members of rural communities. Setšong Tea Crafters aims to provide a voice to these traditional knowledge holders and preserve this knowledge for future generations. So welcome, ladies. Welcome to Culture and Flavor.
Thank you so much for having us.
So let's start with your journey. I remember just being in Johannesburg, visiting your office, and I was just blown away by all of the beautiful teas that were on display, just your hospitality, your warmth. And I would just love for our listeners to learn more about your journey in developing a woman-led, community-based, and indigenous-grounded tea company in South Africa.
Okay. Sorry. So I thought I'd let my mom start, but I'll start. So the journey started in 2014 when my mom, who is a community developer and a community activist, decided to leave the city. She'd been doing community work for almost over 20 years, and she decided to leave the city and, explore our rural homestead back in Limpopo in Sekhukhune, and learn more about the community and our roots, help us also get back engaged with our own roots. So I'll let her take the story forward.
Yes. My passion has developed 22 years ago, which was 2003, where I had a desire as a professional nurse to look at natural ways and preventative ways of interventions in terms of disease management. My heart was really troubled by the spread of disease at the time. The outbreak or a pandemic was on HIV and AIDS, and became so curious to begin to say, there should be something else. There should be some other ways, especially the primary healthcare definition in South Africa was all about investing in preventative measures in terms of preventing diseases. So my heart was on developing models, specific models of a positive lifestyle, many ways of prevention, but at the same time empowering people to be highly knowledgeable, because the science of nursing and medicine was solely given to professionals, but the people who are living their lives on day-to-day basis were left out in terms of being empowered fully in understanding. So that then took us a journey of the first 10 years where we developed an integrated community development model, which was all about community mobilization, asset-based community development, but that was coming directly from a behavioral change model that talks to nutrition, bodybuilding, fighting negative habits, and also fighting stress, on capacitating people to understand how to shelve and have a full equipment in terms of fighting pressure, social pressures. Issues of positive reproductive health was prevailing quite more at that particular time because of HIV and AIDS, but the issues of just stimulating people to have an esteem, understand who they are, and actually partner with issues of spiritual capacity as well as cultural identity. So that was a behavior change model that has already given out a lot of outcomes in terms of what we are doing today. I'm going to stop there. So then the second 10 years was all about now finding suitable targets, and the culture became that suitable target in terms of indigenous knowledge, and playing around and pushing the very same models that have been tested for the past 10 years and push them to integrate them with the Bapedi culture, and it came out very well, as we are going to be discussing that today.
So, how did the tea company evolve from that that moment where you had an epiphany that we needed to come, that you wanted to go back to the indigenous knowledge?
Yes, I was consciously looking for any other solution that can be be owned by communities. To be honest, the tea solution came as it became a blessing on the long journey that I've been undergoing, and because even the very same natives were afraid of talking about it. They were living the lifestyle behind scenes. So I just had to discover, as I was now beginning to live the lifestyle with them coming from the cities. So they were very shy about it, because they sort of like people who were using plants and indigenous solutions were downgraded by those who are highly qualified in the society, looked down as if it's people who are poor, or it's people who are practicing some occult or something. So I had to invest in that stimulation to say, let's try and see what are the benefits of this tea, because traditionally they were they were very much vocal, as much as they were shy about it, but they could express exactly what they are benefiting. So that's where the journey of taking the samples for analysis took us to the heights that we never thought we could explore. So it was quite a journey of about 7 years where we had to knock at different doors of science and innovation in South Africa, and the whole consortium that has to help with product development, analysis, highlighting benefits of these teas. So it became a game changer for us, and it was much more exciting to get something that's going to be much highly innovative and attractive, and sort of like taking our minds to also fight our struggle of marginalization, especially being being advocacy, playing an advocacy role for the very same women who are very suppressed and very shy. So it became a game changer and holistic, and became so integrated, so much that today it's not only the benefits of the teas that we are enjoying, but we are actually uplifting the whole culture and its own ecosystem, which is quite beneficial. And this tea now has given so much confidence to the same indigenous knowledge holders.
Mm. So, Retang, let's talk about the history of tea, both of you in South Africa, specifically in your tribe as well as in rural communities. Um, I just there's so much benefit in indigenous knowledge globally, and because of colonization, slavery, we have so much work to do to remember, reclaim, and learn from the elders before we lose another generation. um, I would love to hear more. I know our listeners would love to hear more about the history of tea in your region.
Yes. So, as you mentioned in your introduction, South Africa is the third most biodiverse country in the world. And yet, when most people think about a South African tea, they mostly think of rooibos tea, which shouldn't be the case, since our country is so biodiverse. And within the rural areas and within our own village, within the Sekhukhune area, these teas, the Tepane black bush tea and the Dia red root tea, have been consumed for hundreds of years by the Bapedi people. And, this is their tea. Before retailers and grocery stores were introduced into communities, this was the tea that they would break bread with, but a tea that would also help and assist in healing different ailments and issues, and teas that they would consume for vitality, for hormone balance, and basic nutrition. So it's not just these two teas that we've developed into our range, but there's an array of many other herbs and mixtures that our people have been consuming for themselves, and using as plant medicine to heal themselves. And before a time where we had many clinics in the areas, traditional healers and midwives, traditional midwives were using these herbs to heal themselves and treat their bodies. And over time, as more retailers began to surface, into even our rural areas and nearby cities, this knowledge was slowly, being shoved away, because now, especially the more educated people were able to buy tea in tea bag form, in a nice looking box from the grocery store, and that became more of a status symbol. and these herbal, these herbal remedies, were being, hidden, like my mom mentioned. And, as more Western medicine, as became accessible in our communities, these remedies were then even more, ignored. So we were fortunate, and we are fortunate, that we still have elders and women and men in our communities that are still holding on to this knowledge and preserving it. And we still have traditional healers, even though they are, sometimes shunned upon. We still have these authentic traditional healers who are still holding on to these practices. And I think now we're moving to a time where we're realizing that we need more than Western medication and Western food, to heal our bodies and, take care of our bodies. And more modern people are realizing that they need to go back to the basics and back to the ways of their forefathers. So it's been an honor to be able to, especially as a young person, to be able to capture that for the next generation to come.
Mm. So let's just go through some of your teas. I loved listening to you all talk about your production facility, how your production facility is right in the in Limpopo, and right with the people who are actually the tea crafters who hold this knowledge. I would love for you all to share more about some of the medicinal properties of some of your teas, especially the one that I love, the red dye tea. I love that tea.
I'm glad you enjoy it. So I'll start with our Tepane tea, which is the black bush tea. This one is quite fascinating. So this is a species of African mistletoe. So I'm sure you know about mistletoe, but there's so many different species of the plant. And what we have an array of different species in South Africa. And what's interesting about African mistletoe is that it actually grows on a host tree. So it's actually a parasite to different host trees, and there's specific trees that are not poisonous, that carry a lot of benefit, that the tepane, I mean that mistletoe is growing on. And indigenously, they know exactly which host plants to harvest from. And what's fascinating about this mistletoe is that the parasite is spread by birds onto different trees. So there's a berry that these birds like, to chew on, and it's very sticky. So, they actually, as they're trying to get the residue of those berries out of their beaks, they use tree barks to brush those berries out, and they leave that residue on the tree, and from there grows this mistletoe. So that's that mistletoe the Bapedi people indigenously called Dapane. And the species that we're working with naturally contains vitamin A, C, E, zinc, a variety of amino acids, and magnesium. So, with all of these nutrients, it's like a natural multivitamin straight from nature. So, this helps with your skin, hair, and nails. It improves your vitality, your energy levels. It assists in balancing your hormones. It provides nutrition to the body. And, it just naturally improves your immune system. And from there, we developed a range of different infusions using other herbs and spices. So we've got it in a lemon, ginger, and cinnamon flu tea, an orange spiced immunity tea, and a chai spiced energy tea, with the original one being for hormonal balance. And the Bapedi people always believed that the Tepane tea assisted with reproductive health, issues of PMS, infertility, with reducing menstrual cramps. And this is, it improves, hormonal balance for both men and women. And that's why we always joke about it. But truthfully, that's why in African villages, you find that old men are still able to have children even at a very late age. And that's why you see also polygamy being practiced. These are some of the herbs that help them, to ensure that their vitality and testosterone is still, at that standard. And a lot of young people are struggling with those issues today because of lifestyle and nutritional deficiencies. So the second one is, which you love, Zella, is the Dia red root tea. So what's interesting about this is that it's not actually a leaf, it's a root, and it grows naturally in the wild, and it almost looks like a sweet potato. And it traditionally, they've been drinking they've been brewing both the leaves and the roots as tea. The leaves are only available seasonally, so we mostly use the root, and the root is actually more concentrated. So we peel the root and shred it and dry it, and that's how it's been even prepared indigenously. And that root naturally contains zinc, fiber, beta carotene, and even a little bit of calcium. And traditionally, it's been used to eliminate toxins from the body. So we positioned it as a detox tea. With the fiber, it helps to assist with your digestive health. It helps to improve your metabolism. And we're still doing more research about it, but traditionally they've used it to even treat urinary tract infections. They've assist it usually assists even in reducing your blood pressure, your blood sugar levels, and cholesterol. So it's really a great herb that assists in naturally detoxing and eliminating toxins and balancing your fluid levels as well. And unlike most detox teas or mixtures, most detox mixtures would actually leave you feeling dehydrated. The great thing about the dia tea is that it even hydrates you as well. It also has properties to assist in giving you better sleep and a more relaxed feeling. So we've developed it into a strawberry and fennel sleepy tea. We also have it in an orange, ginger, and turmeric calming tea, as well as a lemon, ginger, and berry detox tea, with the original one positioned as a digestion tea. So that's our whole range.
And I love the packaging. Sometimes when sometimes we don't have the money in our communities to, just level up to open our businesses to a wider audience. But I love how intentional you all were about branding your tea, as well as just packaging it. I mean, the design is beautiful. Do you share your story on each package? So I truly, admire and acknowledge you all for that business approach. But how do you remain? How do you keep the integrity of rural innovation and this wide tea business that is so competitive?
Yes, indeed. The tea market is highly competitive. And what we did is really remain authentic to the story and the the origin of the brand. So, just in the name itself, Setsong means culture, and that name came from the community. They chose it. And we had to ensure that we represent that culture and all the elements of that culture and that story with the brand identity. So, in terms of our branding and design, you see colors that are bright and colorful, that really represent the Pedi culture, and the shwe patterns, and all of that. So we had to ensure that we're representing the origin and the story, and that's how we ensure that we also stand out, in a very overly saturated market and a highly competitive market. And we're not just selling tea, we're selling a story, we're selling a lifestyle. And that's what our consumers are resonating with. So it's just important to remain authentic and true to that brand story and that origin story to ensure that you stand out against the rest.
We are truly living in a remarkable time because, in the West, our image of tea is, or the tea consumers are British. We still haven't conceptualized that, yes, there's an ancient, centuries old tea, history in Africa, and particularly in South Africa. You talked about community. I would love for you all to just share more information and just paint a picture of what this community of tea crafters is about, who they are, and some of their stories.
Yeah, we have already mentioned that these are Bapedi people who have a specific identity in South Africa. They are Ngunis, they are Sotho-speaking groups. So Bapedi people fall under the Sotho-speaking category of people. But very uniquely, it's people who have a strong sense of group cohesion. Their culture is sort of like a closed circuit, which is understood by them, and they are very silent people who are not as vocal as the Zulu people, as I am a Zulu person. It's very non, not loud people at all. So even to just break into their silence was another effort in terms of making them to be vocal and much more confident about what they are doing, as much as they are confident internally within their culture. But their values are about the organic sense of everything that they are doing, including the food, the planting. They are quietly consuming a lot of organic foodstuffs behind scenes. I was amazed now when I started understanding their culture that they give a Western food to visitors, even on big days like their weddings or funerals, but they actually are the big consumers of their own traditional food behind scenes. So they only impress visitors as if they are also modern, but behind scenes they are very, very much traditional. And it goes a long way. It's not only food, it's clothing. So that's why we also have taken a brand in a way that our fashion, our clothing fashion comes from the very same villages. So when we did asset-based community development and training and capacity, we had to acknowledge and audit all the skills that are existing in these communities. So it's clothing, it's food, it's they like buildings, structural houses, which are also very accommodative. So it's people who have a specific lifestyle. And so we are taking all that lifestyle, the whole creativity, and we mark it against the values that we're selling as part of the story as well.
And just to add, what's very interesting about this community is their self-sustainable lifestyle. Like my mom mentioned that, a lot of the food that they eat is produced by themselves. They live the farm to table lifestyle, and they're so knowledgeable about different herbs and plants. And she also mentioned that group cohesion. We found that there's a lot of knowledge even in terms of business as well, and how to solve problems using traditional knowledge, and they're very rooted in their culture and tradition.
Y'all, when we come back, after a few messages from our advertisers, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll talk about, growing a business post-apartheid. We'll talk about family business. This is a mother and daughter tea team, and they are dynamic. And we'll also talk about the future of Africa. So we'll be back after a few messages.
This episode is brought to you by Plugra European-style butter, crafted for those who demand precision and exceptional results in the kitchen. With 82% butter fat and a slow churn process, Plugra gives you flakier crusts, fluffier cakes, and rich, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. Because great baking starts with great butter. Unlike standard American butters, which have only 80% butter fat, Plugra ensures the ideal moisture and fat balance so your recipes turn out just right every time. That's why professional chefs trust Plugra and home bakers love it. Plugra's slow churn process creates a smooth, creamy butter that gives dough a soft, pliable texture, making rolling, folding, and laminating effortless. Whether you're perfecting a buttery pie crust or layering a delicate croissant, Plugra helps you bake with confidence. Experience the difference for yourself. Find Plugra in stores near you or visit plugra.com. That's Plugra.com.
All right, we're back. So, family business sometimes has its challenges, but you both work so well together. I mean, just seeing you all warmed my heart because I have a beautiful daughter as well. And I just love to see you all, a mother and daughter, working harmoniously together. Can you share some of your stories of working together that strengthen your relationship?
Yes, it was quite challenging, but we are so rooted in spirituality. We're not apologetic about God's guidance on daily basis. We are so much dependent on guidance of people who are mentoring us, even giving us support spiritually. The prayer became an integral part of our journey. But the vision became so clear that at some stage I became a mentor instead of being a mother. I realized that my daughter had a lot of potential and a lot of gifts, and she took a lot of confidence from me as well, because I'm a very assertive woman. And then I realized that I must not block her way. I need to then stand behind her and let her lead. But I was so honored that she also realized that she's following a woman who is already established in terms of spirituality and values. And she also took a lot of my part, that I'm feeling a bit slow even now. She's taken a lot of portion of emotional intelligence. So because of the community empowerment, empowering other women, we had to practice what we are preaching. We had to be exemplary. But at the beginning, it did confuse us a little bit, and we had to draw back and push ourselves back and reflect on what we want to achieve. And we are so much at peace now. Like I'm saying, moreover, she's given me a grandchild. So I'm feeling like I'm much more supportive, and I'm always now fitting everywhere where she's finding gaps. I jump, she doesn't have to invite me. I just fit myself in everywhere where she's finding it difficult, where she is feeling as overstretched because the responsibility that she's taking is quite huge. So I'm just running after her and looking at every gap that can frustrate her. And that's what God has done for us.
Yeah, and it goes beyond my mom and I, because my brother's now involved in the business as well. And, even in the community with these women, because we started working with a lot of them when they were already quite elderly. So what's incredible is that now they've transferred a lot of knowledge to their children, and their children are also taking the baton forward. So I think almost 90% of the women in our organization have children who are now part of the business as well. So it's a family business in many different aspects. And, even in the village that we come from. So, I mean, within our business, there's two villages that we've brought together. It's Rapahla village, which is my father's village, and it's Ramatlala Ramoshibo. And there in Rapahla, you find that most people are Pahlas. So, one way or another, we're related, even with some of the women that we're working with as well. So, yeah, it's on many different levels, but it has really assisted us to overcome a lot of hurdles, to have it was easier for us to adopt a common vision, because we're a family in that sense. And it was just a lot easier for us to persevere because we have each other. And it was easier for us to trust each other along the journey because we're family. We have to stick together and stick it through. And, we support each other through the lows, because within entrepreneurship, there are some very low lows, and we pick each other up through those lows, and we celebrate the wins as well.
I love to hear that. Um, just from my trip, I mean, I was just blown away by everyone who I met on the trip. Thanks to Chef Kutsai Pinge Pinge for making that happen. Um, and, I just, so many of the stories that were shared with me, and, the food that we ate together, or the tea that we drank, I definitely, you know, had felt a commonality and mutuality as being an African American woman, and knowing the history of both of our plights, whether it was during slavery, the civil rights movement, and you all with apartheid. you know, I do feel that there is a return and a reclaiming, and we're in just a very axial age where we have the opportunity and the joy and the honor to relearn and remember all of, what I said previously, indigenous knowledge. And I would love for you all just to share with our listeners more about South Africa, and specifically where you all are in Johannesburg and Limpopo, about, what is South Africa today? For those who have never been to South Africa, what could you share about the region, and also, you being Zulu?
Yes, these are interesting times. I would say, on the positive level, the South African culture is quite beautiful because we we have a lot of ethnic groups in the country. When you talk about Johannesburg at first, we are all here, and the whole Africa is here actually. So it's a matter of understanding. It's so important in the city space, especially around Johannesburg, to first understand who you are and actually accommodate other people. But when you are in a business space, it's different because you need to humble yourself. But the culture of South Africa has got a lot of honor, which is not celebrated as much as it should. Eh, there's a lot of common values which we are sharing as Africa as a whole. It depends on the angle where you are approaching people. For instance, ourselves who are community developers, we always see opportunities besides seeing a lot of negativity. Yes, the negativity prevails. I so wish we can stand up as South Africans and embrace our fellow Africans as much as possible, because there's a lot of learning exchange of knowledge that we can share, but there are a lot of similarities as well. The economy is a bit challenging. It's quite challenging at the present moment. We are feeling the tension. Therefore, it's exciting to discover rural solutions which are very cheaper than the city life. I would say when we started this initiative 11 years ago, one could already have a sense that the city life will be so expensive at some stage because the ecosystem is not really as sustainable as a rural ecosystem. So this is an exciting time for us even as a family. We are already opening a dialogue to say we need to really reverse our gains and look at settling at the rural in the rural environment, because there issues of farming, issues of finding simpler solutions. But I must just say, as much as there's a lot of social pressures, but there is excitement in breaking through into the knowledge that as a family have discovered 11 years ago, and we are now tabling all these things to say let's explore more on the lifestyle of rural settings and come and also be part of feeding the city life with these solutions.
What's also interesting, is that a lot of Black people are also awakening in South Africa and realizing the value of indigenous knowledge and going back to our roots and our culture. We come from a period where uh, sort of more Western solutions and foods and were the in thing, and what was what validated your status. But a lot of young Black people especially are more interested and intrigued about their culture. There is more of a hunger to explore our true identity and embrace it, and as well as our history, and even in the sense of entrepreneurship, you see a lot of young Black people overcoming a lot of difficult obstacles, of the economy, and really being innovative and building their own businesses. And even in the indigenous space, there's quite a few other businesses that are emerging, which is really quite exciting. And we continue to face a lot of social issues and pressures, especially in the township and peri-urban areas. And, the unemployment is at an all-time high right now. But what's exciting is that we're seeing a lot of young people, emerging as entrepreneurs as well.
So, thank you for sharing that. That warms my heart, and I'm so grateful that I was able to see just a sliver of, um, just such a diverse cultures in the region in South Africa and Zimbabwe. I mean, I was just blown away. And I know you all host groups sometimes. I would love just to hear about some of the groups that you've hosted. What did the tours entail, and what were some of their takeaways?
Yes, so this is a very exciting element of our business that we are actively working on developing even more. So we host cultural and tea tours on our farm in the village in Limpopo. And what we do is we teach, tourists and visitors about indigenous plants and indigenous remedies. We show them and teach them about the indigenous tea processing. They get to experience it themselves. You get to grind teas and indigenous foods on the grinding stone. You get to blend your own teas as well. So we take the visitors through a tea blending experience. We do an African tea tasting and African tea ceremony as well, and we eat a lot of good food. So on our farm, we're growing some indigenous food, from wild melon to wild spinach, indigenous legumes, and these women are exceptional cooks. So they cook. Every lady actually gets to cook a dish, and they get to share that dish with the visitors. So we really do provide that unique food experience, because a lot of people, even here in South Africa, don't actually know what is indigenous food. Our food systems have been really colonized. So we're all about decolonizing our food systems and our diets, and teaching our visitors about these indigenous solutions, because our indigenous food also carries so much nutritional benefit, and a lot of it is mostly plant-based. What's great about the Bapedi culture and interesting about it is that it's predominantly plant-based. Bapedi people don't eat too much meat, but even the meat that we serve is organic. We have chickens and goats on the farm, and occasionally we provide that on our menu. And we also have some indigenous games which our visitors get to enjoy. So we've hosted local schools, high school students who are studying consumer studies, who are maybe learning more about the Sepedi culture. We've also hosted international groups. We had the University of Gastroscience in Italy spent,
Mm.
they spent about a week with us, and they didn't even want to leave. It actually got so emotional. They bonded so much, with the community. And when groups come on a more extended stay, we also expand the offering and teach our guests about the basics of village life. So these students from Italy were carrying, water from the river on their heads, and chopping wood and making fires and cooking on the fire. So it was really a cultural exchange that we still value up to this day. And yeah, we just want to see more of that happening. We host corporates as well. If corporate groups are looking at different ways of expanding the mentality and the minds
Goodness.
and of their leadership, and also looking for a wellness experience. We've just introduced camping as well, so people can also stay on the farm and live with the villagers as well, and get to experience all the elements of village life.
Gotta love the Italians. I gave a talk 2 Terra Madres ago in Turin, Italy, at the University of Gastronomic Sciences. So I love to hear that they were there, because that university is amazing, and part of the slow food movement.
Yes,
Um,
slow food, yeah.
yes, love them. So you know, the land, just rooting it back to the land, bringing it back to the land. You all are doing such incredible work. I just love to, every time I, make my tea in the morning, I want to thank you all, because my personal summers, I'm not, when I was in your office and I brought out my fan and I was sweating hot flashes, they're almost gone. So I
Oh,
really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And I know it comes from you all's tea. And even my daughter, I had to reorder and get you all to send it all the way from Johannesburg to New Orleans. And my daughter loves your teas as well. So I thank you all for that. Um, just to, close it up, tell us how tea is powerful in the community, and how we can bridge and bring the community together, specifically with tea from your region.
the tea is it's such a basic beverage which is drank by almost everybody, but it actually was a teacher. It's a teacher to families how to honor the elders first, because when an elder in African culture comes in, the first thing that you consider is to prepare a hot cup of tea and make them comfortable. So it's a welcome drink in African culture, and at the same time, it's the tea is part of discussions in the family, problem solving when people are trying to find a way out of conflicts and confusion. That we simply just prepare tea, opposed to alcoholic drinks. Alcoholic drinks are much more social. People need to go out there and have social drinks. But the tea is a beverage that grounds people, that makes them more relaxed and talk at the same level, at the same peer level. But again, the culture that is prevailing today in our communities, especially the corporate environment, is the issue of high teas. So the high teas are becoming so prevalent and they are keeping us so busy. We're getting invited by different groups of women wanting to find peace out there in the social gatherings, but it's also classic. What is amazing, it's quite classic. When women wants to look good and dress nicely and feel, a sense of a positive energy, the high tea is becoming very, very popular in our society. So that's how it's bringing together communities, whether it's rural communities, whether it's highly classified, high society groups of women. The tea is the issue these days. It keeps on rising. The demand for a class stratification goes hand in hand with the tea today.
I love to hear that. Uh, this has been an amazing episode of Culture and Flavor. I hope my listeners support. I, would love to see more conversations about African tea, because as Asian teas, British teas, Africa has a long history of tea. And I would love for you all to support my sisters and their tea company, Setsong, because they are doing an amazing job and they're giving it back to the community and they're grounding themselves in ancestral knowledge and honoring the elders that came before them. So I thank you all. I thank you both for joining Culture and Flavor.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Stella.
I wake up in the morning and I feeling a vibe. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org.